All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm thrilled to have you join us today as we dive into an exciting chat on IP publishing. We're going to talk about licensed content and a little on book packaging with Jamie D'Amato and hopefully Annie Davenport as well. I guess she's running a little late tonight. Jamie is the author of The Good Vampire's Guide to Blood and Boyfriends, which is forthcoming from Wednesday Books. Go ahead. What were you going to say? I
Oh,
said it
I
right.
was just pointing. I have the covers of both my books up here,
Oh,
although
okay, there you
mirror
go.
imaged right now.
And she's also written IP for Stranger Things. And she's fabulous at blending humor and heart in her novels. And today we're going to explore the experiences of writing an IP and working for book packagers. So, to kick things off, I'll give you guys a bit of a definition of what IP is. There's three different kinds. One is publisher created IP, where the publisher thinks something is going to sell, so they'll reach out to agents and ask for authors to audition for it. Then there's licensed content, which is major brands like Stranger Things or Star Wars or Marvel or DC. And then there's packaged books, which is when a separate company, a book packager, comes up with splashy, high concept books that they think will be commercial successes and publishers buy them. Publishers think these things are low risk because the concepts are usually those that are catering to the market and that they think will sell well. And a lot of authors use it to break in, or sometimes mid-listers whose career they want to give it like a little bolt of caffeine, so to speak, will write one of these to get like a splashy title under their belt. So can you tell us a bit about your background and what led you to begin writing IP, Jamie?
Yeah. So, um, The Good Vampire's Guide is my first book, and that's coming out here in August. And so I got that book deal in 2022, the end of 2022. And it wasn't coming out for 3 years because publishing is just slow like that. And especially for this book, which for many reasons it was pushed back because they wanted to give it its best chance, theoretically. Um, but in between that, I met my agent and editor for lunch in New York, and I was rambling about Stranger Things because I'm a big fan. And my agent was like, I work with the people who do Stranger Things books, right? And I was like, put me in. So it started from just a place of like love and being a part of the fandom, but then turned into this opportunity because I happened to know the right person who knew the right people, which I mean, you kind of hate that it works like that sometimes, the luck and the connections of publishing, but it can be a game changer for things like this. So having my agent really was the bridge for me to get into IP. He sent in like samples of my work and stuff like that. A lot of times they'll have a more structured audition process where you have to do like sample chapters of a specific project and submit that. But for this one, the timeline was very tight. So they were just looking for somebody who knew the IP and was excited about it and, had at least the credentials of I've sold this book and am, an author. um, so this was, yeah, mostly the agent connection and just my enthusiasm as a fan landed me in this position. So feel very lucky to do it, especially like I said, I was a big fan. I was involved in the fandom before I even started doing this. So um for me, it was very cool. A lot of people, it's not like that. I would say a lot of people, or most people, are learning the fandom or learning the IP as they go for the purpose of writing. But I think a lot of the most popular IP novels, like E.K. Johnson and Star Wars fandom, I don't know if you're familiar with that. They have a lot of licensed books that it's coming from, somebody very knowledgeable about the franchise and everything. So.
What advice would you give to somebody who was interested in writing IP?
Mm. Um, So I think for something like the franchises, which is what I have experience with, you really need to get your foot in the door in publishing with your own original stuff first. You're not going to get those opportunities until you have an agent or editors or some sort of credentials under your belt. So my advice, if you're interested in that kind of thing and writing for these big brands sort of is to focus on your own thing, to get your agent, to get those connections, which can be such a process in its own. And I'm sure you can have those conversations about like the querying process and everything if you haven't already. But um, as far as some of the other IP opportunities you talked about, like packagers and even sometimes publisher IP, they'll have open auditions sometimes. They'll sometimes have just like uh, open auditions where you can submit your own writing samples or your own writing, and hopefully they'll think that your voice or your style is the right vibe for a pitch they might be working on. So those open calls, I know quite a few people who are publishing, who are debuting with IP through a packager or a publisher, because they had really strong samples. So that can be sort of a, I don't want to say shortcut because nothing in publishing is ever quite a shortcut, but it can be a way into writing IP without having another deal under your belt already. It can be the way to start things instead of sort of a next step or an in between, which is what it was for me.
How long did they give you to write Stranger Things once you got that?
Um, so we went back and forth with some pitches for a couple rounds of like, these are questions I have, and these are possibilities of like, where in the canon can we insert a cool story that stands on its own. Um, so it started with just questions and sort of going back and forth a bunch with a couple of experts, a couple of consultants, and people from the show. Um, and from there, once we had sort of a rough outline solidified and like agreed on, which is what we were really waiting for a couple weeks, was just going back and forth and trying to get them to say like, yes, this is okay, write this. Once I had that, it was 6 weeks to write and revise it. And it was
Hmm.
about 60,000 words. And I'm not a fast writer by any means when it comes to my original work, but for this, especially like I have a background, have experience writing fan fiction, so in some ways, and we can talk about the ways that it's different and the ways that it's the same,
Hmm.
but for me it felt a lot easier to come into this world that I knew and loved and these characters that I knew and loved and have that basis and just build something from there. So it was easier to do the 6 weeks, but even with other IP opportunities that are like with the publisher or with a packager, those can still be really short turnaround times too, from what I understand. I think most
Hmm.
IP is a lot shorter turnaround than you'll have for, contracts on possible original work. But for me, yeah, 6 weeks. I wrote the full thing in four, and then I revised it a bit.
Now, I'm debuting with a packaged book, and for me, it was kind of similar but kind of different. The first initial draft was like really quick turnaround time, but then we had like some hiccups along the road. She was starting a second company and stuff like that, so then that slowed it down. So then I was actually given more time to develop than I was originally supposed to have, which was
Hmm.
cool.
I think Seth has a hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Seth. I'm sorry.
I actually did have a question since you brought it up about as a kid growing up in the early 2000s that knows fan fiction very well. How is that experience different? Because you mentioned it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, I mean, the way that it's the same, I guess we can focus on that first, is that you're working off of these pre-existing characters that you in some way want to be loyal to, and you're in some way delivering to an audience that already has expectations about it. Um, and and so that can affect things very differently in fan fiction versus IP. In that, with fan fiction, you can really do anything, and it's for just people who will like the thing. So like people joke that like the dark fandoms, the really dark stories like Hannibal, you'll find like a coffee shop AU, versus like the big, like the really soft, like Heartstopper, you're going to be like in an apocalypse. You can go totally off beat and totally like, this is like totally left center of what the story really is or what the original franchise is. So when you're writing IP, you really have to stay loyal to that central what's the real core of the story? What are the themes that are relevant to that, and really sticking to the canon. The canon has to be gospel in a way that it doesn't always have to be with fan fictions, with AU and everything, or alternate universes that people do in fan fiction. And I guess, sorry, I have some notes and things like that, but I think coming from a place of character analysis, that's very much the same thing, and playing with relationship dynamics. And even in some elements, I don't want to say like fan service, but in a way of knowing what those expectations are and how to fulfill them, and what people do kind of want to see without feeding too much into like it's a balance really of trying to find that sweet spot of what people are really going to like, but what stays true to the material. So yeah,
Do
I hope
they
that answers the question.
do they give you any sort of like handbook of canon?
Not really. They really said to me that the show was the thing, and I did the extra legwork of I read all of the other tie-in novels. They gave me the script for the play, the stage play that's in London and coming to Broadway now, because that's a heavy part of their canon. So, um, for me, it wasn't a problem because again, I'm quite obsessed with it. So it was easy for me to remember, oh, in this specific episode, he mentioned this specific thing about his dad or whatever along those lines. Um, so there wasn't one specific sort of Bible besides just the material that they'd put out, the official material. And it was up to me to know that stuff. And um, I remember when I submitted my draft, my editor said it's very rare that they come back with so few notes that they did for me, because I knew canon very inside and out. Versus, sometimes there would be things where it's like, oh, so and so wouldn't say something like that, or this contradicts something that was said in whatever episode. Um, so I don't want to flex on my Stranger Things knowledge, but I do think that knowledge did help ultimately.
Awesome. Welcome, Annie Davenport. Nia Davenport is here. So I want to introduce her again, you guys. She is a powerhouse in speculative fiction, and she's written The Blood Trials and The Blood Gift. And she's also the founder of Story Spinners, which is a book packager. Jamie was talking about her IP work with Stranger Things. Can you tell us a little bit, Annie, about your background and how you got involved in writing IP?
Yeah, hi. First off, so sorry. I have a 5-year-old who has strep throat for the third time in like 3 months, and today just has been a mess. So I apologize. I just completely goofed and lost track of the time. But my IP work, I got involved in IP work back in my time has little meaning like pre and post COVID, but I think it was like 2021. And it was I had been like trying to break into the YA market and sell a novel in that space, and just I kept getting like a lot of rejections, and my agent and editors that we were submitting to saying that like YA was a really tough market at the time. And so I sold my adult fantasy book, The Blood Trials, that was not an IP work. And then like a few months afterwards, I had the opportunity to write an IP book, which is Out of Body, which is my YA speculative thriller. And so I jumped at the opportunity as just like a chance to like get a foot in the door in the YA market that was just like super crowded and like super competitive at the time.
I love that. Let's see. What was the audition process like for you, and how did you get um out of body? Like, was it through your
Uh,
agent referral, or did you? Yeah.
Yeah, it was through my agent. She Out of Body is with the publisher is Harper Teen, but the IP company is Dovetail Working Partners. And then they had reached out to Katie about if I was interested in auditioning for the project, and they sent me over kind of like a pitch which had the like short paragraphs about the main characters and the setting and just like the overall plot. And then I believe I wrote a chapter and sent it over. And then they were wondering if I could revise it. I think I wrote it initially in third person past, and they asked if I could revise it and write it in first person present just to give the voice a bit more of an immediate feel, and I did. And then from there we ended up figuring out that it was a good working partnership on both ends.
Hi, my name is Kaya Freites, and I'm currently in the studio recording Heart's Gambit by J.D. Mile. Chapter 1. Emma Baldwin. Harlem, 1943. When the moonlight hits the circus tents, they bleed. Ruby drops turn to rose petals before raining down on the audience. A symbol. That's all anybody wants. Something that feels bigger than them. No matter the city, no matter the time. Ma always said this when we were fortifying the fabric together, using our hands to imbue the crimson silk with our gifts. Something magical, something beautiful. And if we remind them that we're the best black circus on the circuit in the process, what's the harm? Oohs and ahs ripple as the crowd begins to file into the big top. They settle in their seats and prepare for the show as that bloody rain begins. Find Heart's Gambit wherever you get your audiobooks.
Cool. So, let's see. So for both of you ladies, what was the, oh, actually, before I ask both of you, she talked about like her Stranger Things. You did Buzz Lightyear. And was there a lot of flexibility in that, or was it more rigid? Like, did they come to you with a story Bible and a definitive of what they wanted you to do, or did you have wiggle room in there?
I actually did not do Buzz Lightyear. That honor goes to Bethany Back.
Bethany.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you did. Because I first heard of you listening to you on a podcast and you were both there. So I got the voices confused on that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. So when you did Out of Body, was there a lot of wiggle room in that, or did you have more flexibility?
There was tons of flexibility. I remember they gave me the characters like outlines for Out of Body, and I don't know if this is what they were imagining, but I was like, we're making everybody black. In this book, from the main character to there's like a secondary character who's not necessarily like a fully fledged like second protagonist, but she's like the villain slash anti-hero, and her voice comes into play a lot. And I was like, she's like too. So is the love and interest, literally. So is everybody in the book. And like Dovetail was like really great about just letting me like run with it, and just like putting my own spins on it. Like as far as like where it was set and just like the different world building elements, and it's like a speculative thriller, so whether we wanted to lean into the sci-fi or like the fantasy as like the explanation for why body swapping is possible, I got wiggle room there to figure out like which direction we wanted to go. I think the only like super rigid thing was where the characters started out, and like I call them like the tentpole events along the way that kind of needed to happen, and then like how the plot wrapped up at the end.
Okay. So I guess you couldn't have got away with that, Jamie, huh? You could have told them I was going to make everybody black.
Yeah, no, I also wish I could feel like everybody's queer now, but alas, you have to respect the canon.
Very true, very true. Okay, let's see. What advice would you give, Nia, to anyone who is considering doing IP?
I think the advice that I would give them is like, it has to be for me, and it's something that I learned along the way, but a project that I'm truly, truly passionate about. I mean, I know like talking about like money and royalties, like it can sometimes be like a sticky area in like publishing, but just the honest truth is it's a project that you're going to pour like as much work as you would into writing an entire novel that's all your own, but you're not going to get all of the money that you would from writing an entire novel that's all your own. So like just to like avoid like resentment or like remorse or just like, any type of like, negative feelings, like once you get into the process and you're doing all of the work and you're like, oh, it's sold for this amount, but I'm only getting this. It really has to be a book that you love and that you believe in. And also like I wouldn't recommend that anybody like enters into an IP contract without an agent and or a contracts attorney, and just making sure that like the profit share is as favorable as it can be. Because at the end of the day, like IP companies, they are a business. They're out to make money. They're not out to necessarily like make sure the author is being paid well. And so you always want somebody in your corner to like advocate for you.
Very true, very true. Because you can get like a 20 or 30% royalty on some IP and you do 100% of the work. So
Exactly.
how about you, Jamie? Did you have any of those experiences as far as your royalty and everything with your
Um,
project or
So with Stranger Things, and this is definitely, I mean, it varies so much as everything in publishing, everything is like it depends on the situation. But for me, it was actually a work for hire, so I don't get royalties. It was a one-time fat chunk.
Mhm.
That I got for delivering the manuscript, which for me was because I was a writer with, I mean, while I had things contracted, I didn't technically have any credits out, so I didn't really have a lot of leverage. And they're selling the book for Stranger Things. It doesn't really have to do with me. So as much as like I totally agree with Nia as far as like you have to love it and you have to be willing to like put your all in it in the way that you do a book that's your own. But I would also say with like the licensed IP, there's an amount that you have to take your ego out of it and be like, I'm a voice for this story that's bigger than myself, I guess,
Mhm.
or that's like a universe that's bigger than yourself that you don't necessarily own, but you're just sort of a part of for this one thing or possibly more down the line, but just this corner of the world. So,
And it's still a good look and cool to have your name on a book. You know what I mean?
oh yeah,
Regardless
don't
of the
tell them, but I would have
circumstances.
done it for free. No, I wouldn't
Yeah.
have done it for free on that timeline, but
Very true, very true. What should writers expect when working on licensed content or IP?
I think no matter what, there's like a level of collaboration that maybe isn't the same for original works where you do have like sort of sole ownership, not sole ownership, but you get to say, oh, that doesn't fit my vision. But with something like IP, whether that is licensed or a packaged thing, there are other stakeholders who have a vision for the story as well that you have to sort of find a way to match up with. So I would say
Mhm.
that's the big thing. I would say, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's maybe a little. You're right, Jamie. Everything in publishing is like it depends on the
Yeah.
specific. And from I have friends who do licensed IP, and from hearing to them, like yeah, they have to definitely like make sure things are matching up with canon. So you like even if like your vision is like super cool, you have to like make sure that it's aligning with the canon and like the larger licensing IP's vision. I know on my end, Out of Body was a package book, so it wasn't necessarily like a licensed IP. Sorry. Oh, honey.
Oh.
A little cuteness chat.
Right. And so it wasn't necessarily a licensed IP, so I got a little bit more creative freedom, but like it was a thriller, so I had to make sure I was still like diligently hitting the conventional thriller beats.
Yeah.
Did they give you a full outline, either of you?
Yes, I got a full outline from chapter 1 to like the end of the book.
Yeah, they
Now, see,
didn't
when
give me things like that, but I had to get things approved at every stage on a pitch level and then an outline level, and then of course the manuscript.
I did mine with Electric Postcard, it started with Kate, but then she opened the second company and then it went to Electric Postcard. But when I did mine with them, she gave me 4 chapters And then I wrote those 4 chapters, and then me, Donnell, one of her editors, like brainstormed to come up with the rest of it based on what I had written. And that was how it went for the first book. Well, she didn't give me 4 chapters. She gave me an outline for 4 chapters, is what I mean. Like, but like certain characters did exist, and like like Nia made them all black. I added extra characters. There were people, that weren't on the outline that fleshed out the story and stuff. So it was an interesting experience. What skills do you think are essential for somebody who wants to work with a book packager or write IP?
Probably the writing fast thing or writing to deadlines is probably the biggest thing for IP that I would say. It can be more flexible with original work. You're still working on deadlines, but they're much longer deadlines usually. IP can be a lot more fast-paced and a lot less flexible. Whereas publishing, I've kind of, or whereas my original stuff, I've kind of learned like everything can move around, and if everything on an editor's list, like about 50% of that is moving at any specific time to another season. So it's all fluctuating. But with IP, with this, I mean, they needed to get things to print. They were working on a very fast timeline to where the printing had to go in at a certain time in order to come out on the date that they'd already released that it would come out. So as it always depends on the situation. But for me, I would say the biggest skill is, you have to be able to draft clean and draft fast.
Yeah, I would agree. And the draft clean and fast is a big one because it's something that I had to readjust to because I was used to my editor for my personal works, for me being able to be like, here's a first draft. It's in by the deadline. Also, it's kind of messy. Like it's either really messy to like a little bit messy. Sorry, we will clean it up in in like revisions, and having my editor being like, cool, that's not a problem. Let's just like keep it flowing. Whereas on the IP end, like they're expecting a relatively clean draft to come in by the deadline.
Very true, very true. I know when I worked with a book packager, the packager had their own editors too. Was that your experience as well, ladies, or was it different? With your IP, they had the same?
Yeah, with Dovetail, I have editor Mariana Bayer. She is fantastic. And so I will deliver the draft to her, and me and her will go back and forth to clean up to clean up and polish the manuscript, and then she'll pass it on to my Harper editor. And then when I get notes back from my Harper editor, they go to my IP editor first, and she kind of combines what she thinks with what my publisher thinks. And then she will give me one like condensed edit letter.
Same. That's how it was for me. Only it was like more of an email than an edit letter. She would just put it all in the same email. Is Kate Bronning still at Dovetail?
Um, I don't want to misspeak. I have not worked with Kate, so I'm
Okay.
not sure. Yeah.
Okay. She was an editor over there for a while. She used to be my mentor. She was really cool. I liked Kate. What are common misconceptions about IP writing?
I think the biggest one is just that I think most people, when they think of IP, they do think of the more licensed franchise type things like the Star Wars or the Stranger Things or Doctor Who, anything in that realm. But I think we've already perhaps discussed some of the misconceptions as far as, there's things that come from the publishers, there's packagers that are doing these things that, are completely original concepts, even if they're not necessarily owned 100% by the specific author. So for me, I think just the idea that it's just this one thing of writing big box franchise things, and IP can encompass a lot more than that.
I don't know if it's a misconception, but one thing I didn't know at first that I learned when we started working on my last and final book that's coming out in 26 with my packager, is that so the first book, Out of Body, they gave me the concept from like characters to outline, and I figured out along the way that my creative process doesn't really gel well with that. Like it took me a minute to get attached to the story and the characters and the world because it wasn't originating from me. And so Dovetail was really good about my agent when we started talking about what was book two, really advocating for me being a part of that process, like from the very beginning, where I sent my Dovetail editor like a few pitches of like stories I wanted to work on. And then from there, they kind of got with my publisher and figured out like which direction we wanted to go in. But I got to be involved in the process from like conception to like characters to like world to like what type of magic that we're bringing in. And then the second time around, I got the freedom to treat the outline as like a suggestion, which is not I don't, it may not be standard for most package or deals, but the outline truly ended up being a suggestion. And so like I felt freer to like go off the rails, or like if like I had a different vision for like a character or like a plot twist or whatever, that the outline like was a departure from, to just toss out what the outline said and just go in the direction that I was vibing with. And I actually don't know if that's standard because this is, you know, my first time experiencing that level of freedom with a packager, but it was one of those things that if I never would have asked, I wouldn't have been able to take that creative kind of control. So that's maybe like just something to keep in mind. Yeah.
Okay, I had similar freedom too. Like I said, where I couldn't just like go in any direction, but we would brainstorm a lot. And so I had a lot of input in what direction we wanted to go. And like I said, I added a whole bunch of people that weren't in there, had fun, gave people powers that wasn't in the outline. Just got to play in it, or play around in the world in a way that was really fun for me.
Yeah. I would say,
Tell us a little bit about your work.
oh,
What you have coming now. I'm sorry.
sorry, it was lagging for a second, so I talked over you, but you can go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, you go first.
I was just gonna say off the last one, just I think I agree, like even with licensed work, I think there is the idea that it's very, very strict and that there's not a lot of creative freedom. And while there are certain constraints you have to work with, I think there's a lot of ways
Mhm.
to be creative and bring your own spin to it within those constraints. So yeah, that's another misconception, I think.
Cool. Can you tell us a little bit about your stories that are out now or coming out soon? Out of Body and The Vampire's Guide to Blood and Boyfriends.
Um, I'll start. So, my IP book, The Stranger Things, The Dustin Experiment, is out already. That came out October last year. My debut, my official debut under my full name and original work is The Good Vampire's Guide to Blood and Boyfriends, which is a queer paranormal rom-com, young adult, college-aged, where a depressed college student is turned into a vampire and deals with all the shenanigans surrounding that. So it's cute and quirky, but also kind of heartfelt and a little bit about mental health and things like that. It's coming out in August of this year.
Mhm. Out of Body was my IP work. It is a speculative thriller about one teen girl stalks another on social media. They become besties. They're celebrating their 3 month anniversary. They go to a pop party, do make the ill-conceived decision to do some drugs. She wakes up literally like they swap bodies. But there may or may not be like malicious intent behind it. And so my main character has to like race against a ticking clock to figure out how the heck body swapping is even possible. And if her best friend like has like sinister in like tensions, there's some gaslighting going on. There's also a discussion about mental health and just like what to do when somebody gaslights you, trying to say like you're dealing with mental health issues when like you know that like something insidious is happening. So that's Out of Body. Prior to that was my adult fantasy debut. That was my own original work under my name. It was a science fantasy mashup called called The Blood Trials. Book 2 is The Blood Gift. It's a completed duology that wrapped up in 2023. Basically, a Black woman grows up in this incredibly racist and sexist society. When she learns that her grandfather, like the commander-in-chief of the world, was like murdered by his own military cabinet, she throws her lot into these elite trials to become a warrior. I always say, and pull an Arya Stark and get the vengeance for her grandfather. So that's like my backlist and things that are coming out this July. I promise this is just here because I just finished filming a promo video. But my next original work is Love Spells Trouble. It's coming out with Bloomsbury. It's like a cozy YA contemporary fantasy romance about teen witches who end up in a fake dating trope. One of them wants to save her family's struggling bakery after their relationship goes viral. The other one is a celebrity that just wants the world to forget that his ex cheated on him and dumped them. And then in the fall, I return finally, it feels like forever, back to adult fantasy with a dark fantasy romance with Faye, who are it's enemies to lovers. They end up coming together to defeat a shared enemy. And then my last IP book that comes out now in winter 26. I don't know what I can and cannot say about it because it's not announced yet, but it'll be YA Black vampires set in Dallas and just looking at how like the billionaire tenth of society literally cannibalizes the rest of us and using vampires as like the analogy to that.
Love that.
Yeah, those all
Tell
sound
us a little bit about Story Spinners.
Oh, okay. So you asked about packagers. So just my experience with working with a packager. I recently launched my own. It's called Story Spinner Entertainment. We were talking about like just like it was launched for two reasons. Me, and a really good writer friend of mine, Tracy in Canada. We have been high school educators for over a decade now, and we just find that it is incredibly important for teens and young adults to really like see themselves reflected more in like a breadth and depth of literature. So we launched Story Spinner to just amplify and put out even more stories about BIPOC characters written by BIPOC authors. And also coming from the writer for hire side myself, I've seen some of the wildly inequitable writer packager publishing contracts. So we also launched it with the mission of like just having like a transparent 50-50 split from like royalties to advance and just trying to like lessen that inequity. Oh, and
Love that. Was it?
our first project, which you guys are first to hear it, it sold last year, but publishing is forever slow. So the first project under the Story Spinner umbrella is called Dominique and the Chaos Bringers. It is an MG coming out from Freedom Fire. And I always describe it as if Miles Morales was a 13-year-old Black girl struggling under weight of being both Black and gifted, and then coming into this incredible legacy of conjure magic too, and having to save the world on top of her family and academic expectations.
Mhm. Love that. Love that. Was it hard to start a packaging company?
I'm still like, I feel like we are still like, filling it out and like paving the way as we go, like just like building a plane as like we fly it. But no, like there's been like some other people in the industry who have been just incredible about like giving us like advice. Danielle Clayton over at Cake Creative now. She's been like just an incredible like wealth of information. Just like whenever I like have questions or like how do I navigate this specific aspect, she's always been like incredibly generous with her time and her expertise. We've had our fantastic agent in our corner, so it's been easier than I thought it would be in the beginning.
Mhm. Okay. Anybody have any questions? You guys were that thorough, huh? I am going to put in the chat some downloads that have information on Story Spinners and where you can contact Nia to work with Story Spinners on Cake and Electric Postcard. on Dovetail, because Dovetail also does IP, and they have an email, so you don't actually need an agent to work with Dovetail or to work with Cake or Electric Postcard. Dovetail is an arm of Working Partners, which is really big in IP. So I'm going to be putting all that stuff in the chat if any of you guys are interested in working in IP. But like she mentioned, the splits are sometimes not ideal. So go into it with the aspect, if you go into it with the thought of, I want to use this to get a foot in the door, or I want to use this to further my own goals and to shine light on my own titles. Go in knowing your why, and then that way you won't go in and get disappointed. Jamie and Nia, you guys have been fabulous tonight. I'm so sorry, Nia, about misspeaking earlier, by the way.
No. I love Bethany, so it's an honor that I got mistaken for being author of Buzz Lightyear. It is fine.
Because I was listening to y'all on a podcast, and y'all were both very entertaining, but on a podcast, you don't know who's who. So.
Exactly.
It was on the Afronauts podcast. I was listening to you guys.
Yeah,
so.
no, I listened to that one too. That was awesome. I didn't. Yeah. But yeah, I would just say submit to these things without an agent. That's a great way to get a foot in the door, but do not sign anything without an agent.
Absolutely.
Yes, you can reach out to an agent and say, hey, I've been accepted for this. They like my writing. Please represent me, so you can try to get more favorable numbers.
Yeah.
Thank you guys again for your time. I appreciate it so very much. Thank you, ladies. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you for having me.
And buy their books. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you struggling to keep your writing organized? Trust me, I've been there. I want to introduce you to Scrivener, the ultimate program for all writers. You can outline, draft, and even edit all in one place. Whether it's your next novel, screenplay, or even thesis, Scrivener helps you stay focused and finish strong. Scrivener adapts to your workflow. From your first draft to the final edit, it's a writer's secret weapon. Click on the link below and get started on your Scrivener writing journey today.